everyone, I'm Jo Barclay Logie and today I'm going to show you how to make this beautiful beaded rope. I've made it into a necklace. You could of course use the same technique to make a bracelet. I'm just going to show it to you a little bit closer. So can you see how it's spiraling? The color, I've used 3 colors, they're spiraling round. It's not bead crochet, it's not peyote with a twist. We're going back to the original stitch that we learned, which is peyote stitch, and this is tubular peyote. And I'm going to show you how to do tubular peyote, but then how to make it spiral like this. Before I show you how to do the spiral version, you can see I've got a very small piece here where I've just used one color. It's a great technique for any kind of beaded rope. If you've got a beautifully beaded cabochon and you want some sort of necklace to put it on, this is a perfect technique for that. So to start off, to make it a bit easier, I'm going to use 2 colours. I'm also going to be using a mandrel. This just keeps the shape of the tube running. You could use a pen or a pencil, anything that fits the number of beads that you are using. So onto a size 10 beading needle, I've threaded a length of workable fire line. You're going to need to add into this, especially if you're making a neckline piece. There's no way you can work with one length of thread. And I'm going to work with an even number of beads. So in my first row, I'm going to pick up 8 of the gold. 5, 6, 7, 8. I always pass the needle back through all the beads in my first round. It just reinforces it and gives that first round a bit more strength and durability. So I'm passing the needle back through. If you're making a neckline piece, I would suggest that you leave about a 20 centimeter tail of thread, which you can then use to add on a clasp at the end. So I'm pulling it all the way through, and at this stage I'm going to tie a surgeon's knot. So that's just an ordinary knot. Then a surgeon's knot is you pass the thread over once and then a second time. It's just a really secure way of tying your thread. Make sure it doesn't get caught around any of the beads. And then what I do before I actually start weaving or bead weaving is I will pass my needle through the very next bead, and that just pulls that knot into the bead and it hides it, keeps it secure. If when you come to a later stage and you're going to zap your threads off, you're not going to zap through the knot. Right, now I'm going to use my little mandrel. So I'm popping it on where it fits there. And this just makes it easier because you've actually got something to hold on to. When we start bead weaving, we've got very little to hold on to and it makes things tricky. So this just keeps things in place. I'm going to swap colours so you can see. Now peyote stitch, I've done a few mini tutorials on this, is you pick up a bead, you skip over a bead and you pass through the next bead. So with my thread, I'm going to try really hard not to get it tangled around the end of the mandrel as well. And we want that bead to sit on that side there. Pick up a bead, skip over a bead and pass through the bead. Pick up a bead, skip a bead, pass through. Now if you didn't have this mandrel, you would be all fingers and thumbs at this stage because there is nothing for you to hold on to, and to get those turquoise beads to sit in the right place is really tricky. This is our 4th and final bead of this round because we picked up 8 in the beginning. We're going to go through the first bead, so we're skipping over a bead, going through that very first gold bead, and we're stepping up through the first turquoise bead, always moving to the outside. Now it's a bit easier because I'm using 2 colours and I can clearly see my sticky outy beads. So I'm going to go again with turquoise, and it's easy to see now because I'm just linking the turquoise beads together. This is my third one. And now my fourth one, which is the final one in the round, I need to step up. So I go through the first turquoise I added and the very next one as a step up to the outer edge. And I'm going to swap back to the gold. Pick up a bead, skip a bead, go through a bead. Pick up a bead, skip a bead, go through a bead. I think when you're learning, it's always easier to do it in a multicolor, so 2 colors at least, because then you can see where you're going to be going next. When it's all one color, sometimes it's a bit difficult to see the sticky outy beads. So if you're learning, that's just a tip to try. Through the last one and stepping up through that first gold bead. Now it's easy this round because I'm just linking the golds together. Once you've done a few rounds, you'll be able to just slide this off your mandrel and bead without it, but it definitely helps in the beginning to have something a bit longer to hold on to. Also means that I can keep my fingers out the way a bit so that you can actually see what's going on. Here's my last one in the round. I'm going to go through the first gold and the step up onto the outside. And I'm swapping back to turquoise. It really is as simple as this. I'm going to just keep going all the way around. So I'm going through the sticky outy ones. They're becoming more evident now because I've got a bit more beadwork going on. But if you're unsure, you pick up a bead, you skip over a bead, and you go through the next bead. If you need to refresh your memory on the basics of peyote, you can always look back on flat even count peyote, and that'll take you through the basics again. So I've stepped up to the outside where the turquoise is, and I'm continuing. I'm filling in the gaps. And here's my last one before I step up. So through the first turquoise I added, and then up through that first one in the very last round. And I'm now going to swap to the gold, going through the sticky outies. And that is how you would continue. So this is going to give me a striped effect tubular peyote. But I want to move on now and show you how I made it spiral. For the spiral, I'm going to use 3 different colors, and I'm using size 8 seed beads, but you could use 11s, you could use 15s, you could use delicas. These are the normal Miyuki round size 8s. And I've got transparent amethyst, I've got grey iris, and I've got matte opaque mauve. It's just a lovely contrast to have an opaque with something more sparkly, and it just works so well in your spiral. Right, I'm going to just move that out the way. There's no trick to this, but the magic happens because of the order that you pick your beads up in. So I'm using all 3, and I'm using 12 beads in my first row this time. Always an even number, and you can see I've picked them up in groups of 3 as they are on my mat. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And that's the order I'm going to continue picking them up in. So if you wanted to, you could label these on your mat A, B, C. And then that's how you'd pick them up on your needle. Again, I'm going to move them down towards the end of my thread. As I was making a necklace, I did leave a 20 centimeter tail at the end, but for the demo, I'm not doing that. I always leave that tail so that I can add on one end of my thread. And as I showed you earlier, I'm passing the needle back through all 12 of those beads. It just gives a bit more stability. You don't have to do that, but it's something I've always done, and it makes that first round a bit more stable. And before I do anything else, I'm going to tie off my tail thread using my surgeon's knot. So that's over once and over twice. And pull tight. Right, this is a slightly bigger circle now. So I've got my tail one end and my working thread this end here. As I said, it just makes it much easier. If you don't have a mandrel, I'm sure you've got a pen or a pencil or a tube or something that you can use instead. I'm going to pass my needle through that first bead just to hide the knot in the bead. But I've got my thread round the mandrel, there we go. And that means when I come to zap this tail thread off, I have no issues. I'm not going to cut through the knot because it's hidden. Right, I am always going to be picking up the colour that my thread is exiting from. This is how I'm going to get the spiral. So I'm exiting an opaque mauve. I'm going to pick one up, skip over a bead and pass through a bead. So it's exactly the same as we were doing before. We're just going to pick up our beads in a different order. I'm now exiting a transparent amethyst. So I'm going to pick up a transparent amethyst, skip over a bead and go through the next one. This is the only problem with using a mandrel, is that your thread can get caught around the end. Right, so I'm exiting a grey iris, pick up a grey iris, skip a bead and go through a bead. Opaque mauve. Transparent amethyst. And the grey iris. I'm ready to step up now. So I'm skipping over the transparent amethyst, going through that opaque mauve. And to step up, I need to pass the needle through that sticky outy opaque mauve. Alright, so I've got 2 rows. I'm actually going to just flip this around here so that's a bit easier. Got a shorter end now. Not going to get so tangled up. I'm exiting the opaque mauve, so I'm going to pick one up, and now it's a question of going through the sticky outies. But remember, the bead you pick up is always the one that your thread is exiting from. So I'm exiting from a transparent amethyst and I'm going through the grey iris. Pick up a grey iris through the opaque mauve. Pick up an opaque mauve and I'm back through the transparent amethyst. Now if I didn't have this mandrel there, these initial rows would be flipping all over. They'd been going from left to right around that initial band. So it is an idea to have one of these. It just makes things simpler actually, keeps things in place. Through the iris, pick up an iris, and I've now got to step up to the outside, so through those 2 opaque mauves. An opaque mauve, always picking up the bead that you've just exited from, the colour that you've just exited from. Right, so I'm going to come back to you when I've done a little bit more and I can show you how easy it is to just slip off the mandrel. I've come round a few more times. You can see the spiral pattern starting to happen there, but I now have plenty to hold on to, and I'm just going to slide it off the mandrel, and you can see it's quite substantial already, forms a little tube. It's not that squishy and it's very easy to continue. So I've just stepped up to the outside. I'm coming out of an opaque mauve, pick up an opaque mauve and come through the transparent amethyst. And so you continue until A, you either need to add in more thread, or B, you get to the desired length. And remember, I said to you at the beginning, you can use any size seed bead to do this. The 8s make quite a chunky beaded rope, and 11 would give you a more delicate beaded rope, and obviously a 15 even more so. So here we go, we're ready to step up, last bead, and we step up through 2. And don't get your thread caught like me. So there you can see how that spiral is forming. Really very, very easy to do, a great technique, tubular peyote, and super for an easy beaded rope. Thanks for watching.